So yeah, welcome to Language of Ramses. Main topic today, chapter 17, but I have some mopping up to do before that, namely in the last, hey Chris, in the last host and session, a really interesting question was asked about the negative construction of to know. And that's something that actually was explained in chapter 16. I didn't really go over it in much detail and promptly explained it wrong. So I thought let's fix this. So a quick flashback to chapter 16 and then a few slides, three in total on 17. So I think we can cover all that in one session. So yeah, let's start with to know or not to know, and that beautiful Shakespearean Hamlet glyph here on the right. Uh, So I'm following Neveu here, but I double checked that it's looked up some additional information because I was curious about it, how to use the word rech to know, which is basically there since the earliest times, Old Kingdom. It gets lost in Coptic. Not completely, you'll see in a moment that it's still there, but it gets replaced by a new verb in Coptic, ime, already there in late Egyptian, spelled like ein and am. That becomes the normal word for to know something. But before that, like in the 2000 years before late Egyptian, rech is just like one of the most basic verbs in the language. The meaning is non-terminative, as Neveu says. In other words, the meaning is really to seek to know, to be like in the process of acquiring knowledge. It's not to know, but it is to get to know, essentially. Like noscere in Latin too. And
Aurelio,
that, yes, sir.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Um, you may be aware of it. There's a word in Middle Egyptian where am means to swallow, and that's like another way of saying to understand or to know something.
That's a really interesting question because that came up on another channel the other day. So there are indeed two words, am to swallow
Yeah,
and am to know. And the question is, are they the same? Like, is one the origin of the other? Like, is to swallow a fact or something, does that mean that you then know it?
right.
Or are they just homophones? And I've seen the theory that the two are the same word, like one generates the other. To be very honest, I'm a bit skeptical because homophones do happen.
Yep.
And normally the one that means to know, at least in late Egyptian, has the little I behind it, while the one like peter, like to see,
Hmm.
while the one that means to swallow normally does not. That, however, to your point, there are situations in the Book of the Dead where they spell the same way.
Right.
So I honestly don't know. Have you seen that somewhere in a lecture or in a book or I was curious what the theory out there is, if they're the same or not.
Yeah,
Um,
in the hymn to the Aten, there's a line where it says the dead shall not know, and they
mhm.
use the word I'm.
Mm,
So
gotcha.
instead of saying, because if you read that line, saying that they will not swallow doesn't make sense, because the lines above it talk about them being in utter darkness
Hmm.
and them not knowing one eye from the other,
Hmm.
and them not being able to know that things are being taken from underneath their heads in their tombs. And they use the word
Cool. Hmm.
yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, later, I mean, in Coptic, it's ime. That is just the word for to know. So it completely replaces rech in that meaning. So that's not sometime, I think, in the New Kingdom, if I'm not mistaken, that more frequent use of am. So that would be in the Great Hymn to the Atom. Doesn't surprise me at all. That's the right time.
Yep.
Cool.
Thank you.
No, great point.
I've wondered about this actually in connection with the Old Testament because quite often, knowing the Lord, oh, taste and see that the Lord is gracious.
Hmm.
Uh, I think the sort of mouth eating analogy probably affects quite a few things like knowledge, and even in the New Testament, I won't taste death until I come into my kingdom, and which means I won't know, I won't experience. So I think experience, eating, knowing is maybe it could be to do with that.
You know what? Now that you
Another
said
thing,
it,
since
go
we're
ahead.
you brought up the Old Testament, there's a concept of knowing versus knowing sexually that comes up in Semitic languages, especially in Hebrew, and don't want to throw that out there necessarily in Egyptian, but there might be original like versions of like connotations that the words had separately on their own, like to seek to know, and then maybe eventually it just became a plain word for know, kind of like how I think there's a word that means like buttocks, but then turns into the word for behind in Coptic, or like the word for the preposition for like downwards or I think it's like behind, right? It's like, I don't remember,
And buttocks are behind. Yes, that's right.
but it doesn't mean like the butt in the later form. It just means a preposition like backwards, like going back, like going in the direction of your butt, basically. So, but it doesn't have the butt connotation later. So there's sometimes when there's like a word that means one thing and it might be kind of more, maybe it doesn't have to be like more provocative to begin with, but then it takes on like a basic meaning later. So I
Are
don't
you
know.
suggesting to go buttwards?
Maybe, yeah. I mean, basically, I like that. That's a good way of translating it in a funny way. So
No, but seriously, actually, those are both two really good points. And now I keep thinking about what Chris just said a moment ago. Maybe I'm too quick to reject it because the word about the point about taste, like taste death or something. I thought that was there in Egyptian too. I'd have to double check it, but it sounds to me like something that's not just in Hebrew. And definitely, Ben, to your point, the one about carnal knowledge is 100% there in Egyptian. I've seen it. To know somebody in the
okay,
way of a woman, that means just what it would mean in Hebrew. So there is
okay, that's
no
good to know
difference.
that that connotation is similar with that.
And now if we say, of course, to have not tasted death, if I remember correctly, that is there in Egyptian, then honestly to swallow and to know is not that far apart as I initially thought. Maybe there's something to it. I'm just always wary of homophones because we have them in English too. And my standard go-to example is the ear. Um, in German, the ear on the head and the ear of corn are two different words. Ohr und Ehre. Ehre is the ear of corn, and Ohr is, well, basically the thing on your head. In English, due to sound change, they've become homophones. So if, say, a future glologist or whatever it would be in 3,000 years were to look at English today without any knowledge of where it came from, he would say, oh, sure, the ancients called the thing on the plant, they called it an ear because it looked like an ear to them. When in reality, we know, no, it's two different words that have merged due to sound change. So it's always difficult when you don't know the prehistory to say, are those related or not? But at least it makes more sense to me now. Really
I
cool
always
points.
worry about entomologists and etymologists. Hypothetically, in the future, if people forget the etymology of both of those words and they conflate them,
Right.
this is just hypothetical, but because there are people like randomly on the internet who will use one of them incorrectly. They say, well, yeah, etymologists study bugs or entomologists study words. Like, oh, no. But I mean that people can correct them and look it up now, but hypothetically, if that information were lost thousands of years later, uh, I mean, maybe people will be calling etymologists entomologists, or they might come up with a folk etymology. This is all just conjecture, but it's kind of fun to think about sometimes.
Gotcha. Well, I'm sure that to effect and to effect will be treated as spelling variants based on good and
Definitely.
bad.
And who and whom will be completely
Right.
cease to exist. Yeah.
You got it. All right, let's go on with our Recht though. So how do you use it with that funny non-terminative meaning? If you want to say he knows, it would simply be zu Recht. The Recht in this case is a stative. So this is a first present, but using the stative because now you're in a state of knowing, basically, or in this case, he is in a state of knowing. So bonus question, what would be I know in late Egyptian?
Ich, ich,
Uh, um,
Requi,
Rechku.
Tui,
Did you say
tuire.
Rechku? Uh,
requi.
okay, I like Rechkui, but we need a pronoun potentially in front of it.
Oh,
Tuire. Oh,
tui requi.
That is
oh,
correct. Yeah, right.
almost cool.
Let me
Tui.
write it down. So I know would be tree, and then Rech. Let me turn on the right keyboard. Uh, Tree Rechkui, like this, and then later. That Cree can undergo all those changes that we know. It could be Rechku without the last vowel. It could just, I think it could become Rechti at some point in time, and then ultimately will just become Rech as the stative endings fall away. But the most quote unquote normative version, the most correct version would be this. Um, so Tri Rech Qui, Surech. Rebecca, what did you have?
Oh, I just said E, but I'm just a bit confused now. So is this tui rech qui? Does that really mean I? No, I.
Yes, you say it twice. A little bit like now I'm trying to find a language that does that. I mean, we sort of still do it in the third person in English. He says, you have the he in front and you still put the final S at the end. In a way, you have the subject indicated twice. We don't do that an awful lot in English anymore, but for example, in German, you do it with every verb, verb, verb. No W. Jeez. Yeah,
Coptic still does that, right? Coptic with some verbs, not with this verb, but like
yeah.
with some verbs of motion, like or he set it,
That's a
or
slightly different thing.
That's different because
That's different?
that's different because the he is the man speaking and the it is the thing he's speaking about. Whereas
You're right,
this,
yeah. This is
Aurelius
the
is
subject
saying that it's
repeated.
I twice.
Got it. Okay, so
Right.
both of them refer to the subject of the verb. Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
that's right. That's right.
Nice.
And yeah, I think you still would normally have the subject here, but you have to use the endings. That's a little bit like in many European languages where you can have the pronoun and then the ending still appear in the verb. It's actually kind of analogous. So that's how it works in for the simple first present. Somebody knows, I know, you know, he knows, etc. Just the pronoun plus then the verb and the stative. For the negative form, for the negated, he doesn't know. Well, there's two options. The most common one is Burechef. So I'm actually not sure what that is. If that's like a past F, it may be. But it has the negation bu in front of it. There is a rarer form, according to Neveu, which has the bun that we're used to from the first present, and then the stative construction. So it's the same thing here, just with a bun slapped in front of it. It does happen, although this is the one that you're going to see way more often in late Egyptian texts, to say he doesn't know. So if we take the first construction and I wanted to say I don't know, what would it be?
Oh,
Tuiburehi.
Not quite. Think of it as a past F. I think, Rebecca, you were closer.
yeah. Bo tui rech. Rech. Bo rech tui. Bo rech. Was it Sue? Are we doing with Sue?
What's the first person? It's the same as in
Tui,
Hebrew.
but in he kui.
Not quite.
E,
Yeah,
he.
Rechi. I was
Okay.
thinking past tense. What is it in Hebrew for the past tense? Is it not E?
It's T,
It's T.
Tav T.
Okay, so I gave a bad tip. My bad. I'm sorry.
But ani and the first person always has an E sound on the
That's
end, so I
that's what I
see.
was thinking of. That's right. That's what I was thinking of. But yeah, you're right. In the verb, it isn't. My bad. So yeah, it's just the first person E. Burechi. I don't know.
Now, I have a question. Isn't there's a word for in Middle Egyptian for not knowing, a
Yes.
separate word.
Chem.
Is that completely gone?
No, that's still around. That's still around. I think you're thinking of,
It starts in M, I think.
is it chem or is it
Yeah, it's chem.
Yeah, I think so.
I think it's second
Oh,
H.
it's a completely different route
It's a
from
completely
not
different
knowing.
route.
Cool. All right.
Here we go. Here it is. Chem. That's still around. Spelled like this. M and then the shoulder shrug arms. Still exists. So you can
I
use
like
that.
that has the shrugging arms. That's helpful to remember it. Like,
That's a great way how to remember it, isn't it? Right? Can also have the bad bird. All right, so that's Chem. They both exist. So you could use that too. Okay. Maybe a quick side note. I don't want to go into too much detail here, but I've seen it in some sentences with a circumstantial, like while he didn't know. So for the past tense, just a straight while he did know, just a straight F, past tense F, and then for the negation of that, he didn't know, use the Bupui form. Bupujev rech. He did not know. So this verb is a little bit different from all the other ones that we've seen. And that can lead to, honestly, if you're just trying to translate a sentence, it's not going to lead to a lot of confusion because you're going to get it from context. If you wanted to write late Egyptian, this is going to be a bit more of a bugbear because you have to remember that essentially the past is the present in this case from a meaning. And there are other ways how to express that something really was in the past, somebody didn't know in the past. I gave a couple of examples here from Neveu of the bun plus dative. That's the one that he says is not that common. But I just want to set that up for the next page. Because what all the examples here have in common is they're all about, I didn't say that, my apologies, knowing a fact, knowing a thing, not for a verb. I'll get to the verbs in a moment. So here's some examples, like for example, is ben tu irechku, paenti ige imam, or im. Don't I know where the cow is? So don't. Benti rechku. I am not knowing, I'm ignorant. Pa enti ich im or em im. That which the cow is in it. So here, this is basically a direct nominal object, the thing that you know. In this case, to say I don't know, you could either use the burechev or you could use this form here, the bun plus the tui plus the stative. And here's another example just in the second person plural. Don't you know the situation of the village? The situation of the village is Pa Secher and Pa Demi. And then again, bun plus dative. Could have used Burech as well. Could have said Burechten, I guess. I'm not sure if this is because those are questions, and that's why he's using the bun plus pronoun plus dative. But yeah, these are clearly statives, and these are being used to say that you don't know a thing. Why am I stressing that? Because the construction changes when it comes to infinitives, which is what I wanted to go over and where I got confused the last time. So before we go there, any questions on this?
I just want to check about the tense situation. Is there you mentioned there's a possible confusion for composing with the tenses. Does that have something to do with the form that you'd expect for a past tense being used for the present?
Exactly. I mean, in English, you would think
So,
I know would be rechi, right? I mean, that would be the, oh, or maybe, hang on, how would you actually do it? Fast tense. You would think naively, if you just know the first present, you would think I know would be tui rech. I'm upon
right,
now knowing that would be like a naive assumption. If you don't know Middle Egyptian, you
right,
already know that it is a bugbear there. So what you
right.
have to know is when you want to construct it, for just to say I know, you have to use the stative, essentially. That's the first thing you need to
Got
do.
it. So it's kind of sort of like in ancient Greek, oida means I have seen and has a
Mhm.
different meaning, but it used as I know.
Ah,
But it's not exactly with the semantic shift happening because it means I know either way. It's just you have something that is a past tense that gets translated as a present tense with a different meaning. But here the meanings, it's not quite, but like the meaning's the same, but the tense kind of the expected tense shifts to something else from the present that you'd expect to the stative to make it present.
right.
I don't know, I'm just trying to use stuff that I know about to try to compare. So,
Latin is the
um,
best example.
okay,
Nosco and novi. Novi is
right.
I got to know, but it really means I know.
Okay. Yeah, that's a better example because they have the same meaning and the verb change doesn't change meaning.
That's right. That's right.
Cool, thanks.
Absolutely. And then the other one I wanted to cover was, so now what happens if you want to use an infinitive with it? Because you can also use rech to know in the sense of to know how to do something, which is very common. That happens in a lot of languages that essentially has the meaning of can, to be able. So basic meaning with the infinitive is to try, to know how to. He tries to choose. So su, her, dech, setep. Su being our subject pronoun, her being our preposition upon, rech in this case the infinitive of this verb. You can't tell the difference because they look the same in the third person singular, but in this case it is the infinitive, otherwise it wouldn't be after the her. And then basically another infinitive here, setep, to choose. So he tries to choose, or maybe he knows how to choose. Literally, he upon knowing to choose. It's just the way it is expressed. Many languages do that. And interestingly, this usage survives into Coptic. So in Coptic, it's called a potential infinitive, or at least that's what we call it today. No idea what it's called in Coptic grammar. Here's an example I picked from actually the Coptic dictionary online. Nim hu pet nash ti uven. Ti uven, resist us, literally give against us. This here being the first person plural, uve being a preposition that comes really into the language more like in demotic, I think. I'm not sure if it appears ever earlier. This here, of course, is our good old redi, to give. So to give against us. Petna, he who will. This here's the article, patana. Et is enti, the relative pronoun. So pet, the one who. Na is the first future, in case you're wondering why there is a third future. Here's our first future. So he who will give against us, he who will resist us. But then there's like a little sh in the middle. And that sh is our good old rech. It lives on in Coptic in the meaning of being able to. So nim petnash ti uen, who is it who will be able to resist us? The sh imparts the meaning of being able to.
That's a similar semantic shift with Heper, or Hepri becomes Shopi or Shope,
You mean phonetic
where
shift?
the H becomes Sh.
Very common. I would say about
Yeah.
half of the time ch becomes sh, the other half of the
Right.
time it becomes chori. So
Right.
one of the two.
Oh, right. It does Hori too. Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
you can't tell. Like for example, in onech, I mean in to live, onech, it's a
right.
ch.
Ankh. Onech.
And
Yeah.
then there's an identically spelled ankh, which means like used in an oath, basically, to swear. Also spelled ankh in Egyptian, and it becomes anash in Coptic. So
So an
it's
oath is an ash in Coptic, but forever or life is Onech.
onech. So one has the ch
Onech.
and
Right.
one has the sh. Go figure.
Right.
So
Ah, that's fun.
whatever configures that shift to sh, I am not sure.
Somehow they are kept distinct in like later forms of Egyptian, but they weren't in earlier. It doesn't, as far as we can tell from the
Oh,
phonetic part of the glyphs, right? But
if you go all the way back there is something about sh and sh, the fourth H, being the
oh,
same sound in like pyramid text kind of.
oh,
There,
cool. Okay.
there is something
Sorry, I
like
got
that.
us off topic, but that's cool. I didn't know that.
But there is something like yep, such things happen.
Cool. Neat.
Hey, when you have 4,000 years of sound change, you see all sorts of things, which is just perfectly amazing. Okay, so in any case, that's our little sh. It imparts the meaning of to know how to. It also works in a negative. Bu rechef setup, he does not try to choose. Bu sen chedech setup, he cannot choose. And that was the one that I wanted to point out. In this case, surech is actually an infinitive. That's something I found out after our last Horizon session. I had thought because over here it's ben surech with the stative, I thought it was a stative too. But then when you look very carefully, here's a nice example from Cherney Groll. Ben tui gedech pere ebol. Ben tui gedech pere ebol. I'm unable to go out. And the interesting thing that you see here is it's a cher. So it clearly has to be an infinitive. In this case, they did us the favor of writing out the preposition. And so that really tells you that when you're dealing with the rech plus verb, this here actually, oopsie, is an infinitive construction, not a stative construction. All right, that was something new I learned. And it's actually in Never. I just didn't read it. So yeah. So if you ever get into constructing things in late Egyptian, this is definitely going to be one bugbear where you might want to check the how the grammar really works because it's kind of complicated. Any questions on this one? Or did I manage to talk everybody to sleep?
No, I just appreciate how you said evol at the end. Like it sounds exactly like Coptic for
Yeah, so it should
Right of
probably
times.
be some people say erbener or erbel, and I guess
Oh no, I thought it, although it was helpful because, it's familiar to people who study in Coptic, so
right.
and it's where it comes from, so it's kind of, but there's probably a different Egyptological pronunciation without the O or something. I don't know.
Well, it should be erbel, I guess, would be Egyptological, or even erbener. I've heard that a lot, but in my head it's ebal basically because that's what they're writing.
Right, makes sense.
Aaron, you had something, I think.
Oh, I was taking a second to look at the distinction between does not try and cannot.
Yeah, that's interesting, huh?
It's tough because, rec, those are very different meanings, but they both use rec. It's a little, I feel like it
Right.
would be a little hard to tell them apart. Why is the negation different?
Yeah, this is how the translation in English of Neveu's book has it. I haven't read enough to really be able to tell that that's the difference. Maybe take it under, put it somewhere at the back of your mind that, oh, it could also mean to try to tell apart or to choose in this case. Yeah, it did catch my attention too, like, that's kind of different.
The first one that you should know, it negates the infinitive, and the second one, it negates the act itself.
Mhm.
I'm not sure. So that's how we actually know which one is negated.
So I think the line was a bit broken, but what I heard is you're saying one negates the action and one negates more like the difference between I don't know if you're coming and I know you're not coming, basically. In one case, you're negating what you know, and in one case, you're negating the act of knowing, so to say.
Oh, like where the not is positioned, the negation's
Correct, correct.
positioned.
And
Okay.
I'm trying to apply that to those two sentences. Boeregev setup. He doesn't try to choose. Bensu gerecht setup. He cannot
There is
choose.
not an ability to, or it is not possible to choose, meaning he cannot choose, versus,
I'll tread lightly because I
I
just
don't know.
honestly don't have enough familiarity with those two
Sorry.
sentence patterns to really say how it is. Ask me in 2 years, maybe I'll know that. Yes, Rebecca. You're on mute.
I found it in the French. So the one we're looking at, which one we're looking at? The Boereth setup.
Right,
He
that
doesn't.
would be 16.7.2.
Okay, so 16.7.2 in the affirmative, it's okay, in the negative, it's Boereth setup. Il n'est pas capable de choisir.
He's not able to choose, yeah, makes sense.
And then ben su rech setup. Il ne cherche pas à choisir.
Ouch. So
He
when
does
you
not seek to choose. And you did say that seek and know are kind of the same thing.
this is super embarrassing, guys.
No,
Because
it's not.
it is because I flipped them the
They're
other
opposite.
way.
Yeah. Flip flop.
Oh, okay,
Thank
no
you.
worries.
So told you I'm not familiar with those two. So yeah, no, thank you. So this one is the one that says cannot, not being able to, and the other one is the one that says he doesn't try.
That's a huge
But
difference in English. That's interesting.
and this translation down here, I'm unable to go out. That is the second one. I think that's why I probably made that mistake because this here is clearly the able version. It doesn't make sense to make that into I am not trying to go out. Huh.
There are
Unless they
tons
mean
of
the same thing.
examples. I think, for example, the example mekbu bawi ek jeli bayi has Yeah, it's look, you didn't find my silver, but if it wasn't Ben, then you didn't. The exact negation is for silver, but if it's Ben, the negation for the gem you didn't even find.
Can you say that again? The line, unfortunately, is, at least on mine, very poor. I could barely hear you.
Or write it in the chat, can you? Because we can't hear you,
Yeah.
perhaps. And then
Give me a
Aurelia
second.
reads it out. Aurelia read it out because it sounds interesting.
Yeah, I want to hear it too. Or
Yes,
know
same
it too.
here.
Okay.
Okay,
But
sounds good.
while she's doing it, Aurelio, so the rach plus infinitive, this is probably what it says in English, but he says, le sens obtenu est essayer de chercher à avoir la volonté de non accompli ou être capable de pouvoir accompli. Is that the same as English?
Yes, pretty much. I think so.
Okay, sorry.
No, that's good. That's good. But looks like they've done a decent job in the translation. I mean, I didn't want to get too hung up on this one. Just wanted to show that the grammar is even more complicated than I thought. Different constructions with the infinitive and with the noun, and also a whole range of meaning that goes a little bit beyond the just to know part. And I just saw your message. Yeah, posting it later in the chat is fine. Let's just do that then. That's fine. And I would say, just looking at the clock, I'll move on to chapter 17. Really closing out 16 now, finally. So, 17, safer waters, not as crazy as the whole grammatical complexity of Rech and its many different tenses. The aorist. What is an aorist? Depends very strongly on the language. There's an aorist in Greek. I'm not even going to try to describe it because my Greek is terrible. I'm sure several of you could do a much better job. In Egyptian, it refers to, or rather in modern Egyptian grammar, it refers to something which is generally true. So where you could put the English word usually in, for example, without reference to a particular time frame. I always follow my heart would be an example. Like it's basically a verb form, a tense that allows you to express the things that are always true or that are generally not true, basically. That it is always the case that this is not so. We have several expressions in English you can use. You can use generally, you can use usually, you can use won't. One is want to ignore one's own flaws. I hope I pronounced that right. It's one of those words that you only see written normally. I will never understand it, like I will never, he will never, etc. That's the negative version. I'll never understand why you do that. Another example. These things can be expressed with their own quote unquote tense in Coptic, and to a lesser degree also in late Egyptian. What does this look like in Coptic? In Coptic, you have a form share, or with suffix pronoun, it's just sha. So shaf sotim, he generally hears, is one to hear, usually listens to, blah, 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 blah. And this comes from an older cher irif sajam in Demotic and also in late Egyptian. And then there is a negative version of this, mere, with suffix pronoun, it becomes just me. Mef sotem, he never hears, he never listens. And this comes from an older bu iref sejam. So that's what's behind that. I'll pause here for a moment. Any questions on this concept?
Is this the same as the habitual?
Yes, I think that's the same as a habitual. Yes, that's right. Just another name for a habitual tense.
Is there another form that describes things that are always true that is juxtaposed with this? So this is things are generally true, but then there's another verbal form that this is always true, or like just a simple statement, like it's true.
I
Well, how about the perfect? I mean, isn't part of this to do with mood and aspect rather than there's a sense of ongoingness with this, whereas isn't the perfect something to do with a completed event?
Yeah, that's like a simple past or a completed in terms of aspect of just a finished event, completed event versus like an ongoing imperfect event. But this
Then
sounds like it's
I don't know what I'm
not.
talking about because I don't know how the imperfect fits with habitual, blah, blah, blah. So please ignore everything I said.
That's okay. The word habitual makes me think of imperfect in Latin and Greek, which has to do with aspect, and it's different than this. So the aorist in Greek is completely different, like Aurelius said, like terminology. It's just like it's a simple past action that's completed aspect.
Right.
So sounds like the term is really confusing between the two languages.
Unfortunately. And I think maybe
Yeah.
I like habitual. Now I want to put a second H on habitual. No, I like habitual better. But it's the name it
Or even
has.
general, like maybe, I don't know.
I mean, okay, let me break this down a little bit. In Coptic, if you want to, first of all, Rebecca is spot on. It's an aspect question, more than anything. And aspects, in my mind, get kind of difficult because just like prepositions aren't the same between languages, they have different fields of meaning. Aspects also, they have like their own shades, and every language groups them differently. In the case of Coptic, if you want to stress that something is always the case, like a general rule, you use these two quote unquote tenses, shaf and mef, share and mere. They are very, very commonly and regularly used. In late Egyptian, the predecessor of this, of the negative, is used a lot. This one here only very occasionally. So it's more common, I think, in late Egyptian still to just use, you can use your first present for this. The first present has a lot of different meanings. It can be something that's punctual, currently ongoing. They are currently invading, basically. It could be he enters the house just completely aspect free, just describing that something is happening. Or it could be a general statement to say, I always do this. So the first present in late Egyptian can have all these different shades of meanings, all these different aspects. Ongoing, aspect free, so to say, and generally true statement. You can use this form to stress that something is always the case, but you're not obliged to. In Coptic, I would say it's far more common to use this tense when you want to express that something is habitually true. Habitually, I did it again. Funny. This is going to be this is going to be my mispronunciation for the day. Perfect. I think that's where Greek really leads you astray because there's nothing perfective to this in Egyptian, but of course the Aorist, just calling it this way, yeah, it leads you down that path. I don't know how this works in Middle Egyptian. Anybody have any comment on that? Like when you want to make a general nomic statement, is it just a basic Sejm F? I think you can use UF Sejm F to stress that something is always true, if I'm not mistaken. I thought
Yeah,
I
it's
saw
the
that somewhere.
enough form.
Yeah, no, that has that habitual or always or nomic kind of quality to it. I'm not sure if there's more that you can use in Middle Egyptian.
Well, there is a thing actually in Greek called a nomic aorist that is that concept. So that's even more confusing because it doesn't have the aspect, but it does. It's like it's used for when you have an aorist form, but it's translated as a simple present statement. So there's another layer there. It's like it's literally he did this, but it's
Right.
meant he does in general. So I think maybe
Luckily, we can forget Greek because it's not really related to this, is it? Because
It isn't.
yeah, I'm sorry. The terms are directly from Greek, and so I'm trying to yeah, use what I know, but also be open to learning how it's different. So I'm not trying to confuse you guys by bringing it up. I'm sorry. Just trying to-
Yeah, I think you can safely ignore it here, even though it is the same term.
can I
Okay.
ask a quick question? This the shat and the meta, or the shade and the meta, did you say they were from different verbs by the time it gets
Well, yes and no. Let's look at that. That's actually the next place I wanted to go. So in late Egyptian, you actually have multiple constructions. The older one is, or the basic one is khur, our good old friend khur, the kh and er, that also can be used to the preposition khur, that can also be used to introduce sentences in the meaning of and. It also is used to form this verb form. Khur sechmef, he always listens. Or you can expand that by putting ire. I mean, Iri in the middle. Her irif sajam. He always hears. It's the same meaning, just this is again one of those periphrastic constructions in late Egyptian where they like to use the verb to do, to make, to basically expand the whole thing. And that's what ultimately becomes your share. Because like Ben said a moment ago, half of the time becomes sh in Coptic. And then basically so becomes sha. And the ire is the second part of the share. So it's really share is the combination of those two. You wouldn't get it from Hertz Sejm, you get it from the periphrastic version. The falls out in front of a suffix pronoun. That's how you get the sha. Now for the mere, that's really just bu Sejm f. Again, expanded with iri in the middle. Bu Sejm f, I'm sorry, bu iref Sejm. He doesn't listen. And that gives you, with a nominal subject, it would give you mere, and with a pronoun, it gives you me. So a lot of the stuff that you see in Coptic is already there in late Egyptian. Actually, pretty much all of it when you look carefully, which is kind
Because
of
the
cool.
B turns into an M, because those are both made with the lips, right? Sort of what,
You said it. You said it. It
okay.
happens a lot. It happens a lot. Like bu place becomes ma, and there are a few others that were excuse me, where a B sound in late Egyptian shows up as an M in Coptic. Seems to be a rule.
Great.
Yeah. Let's see, what else do we have? So yeah, that's really what it is. So you see those two constructions in late Egyptian, and of course, all that's left to do is let's look at some examples. And I'm going to go into scribe mode here. As usual, I take suggestions. I think all of them are taken from Neveu this time. I didn't add anything. This part here is a little bit tricky. I stumbled over that one. This here is from some kind of a royal speech. So of course the usual glorification of royal power, pharaonic power. So yeah, if anybody wants to take that one.
I'll try, but I might be slightly cheating.
Okay, that's fine.
Ir
Mhm.
chi ch im sne
Sen, yeah.
im sen
Mhm.
bu iri radui u semen warsen.
That is definitely correct. Warsen.
I
Okay.
was cheating, completely cheating, but better.
Let's break it down. So it's correct. Now, what does it mean?
Someone else say that.
Good enough. So pech is to attack. That's what the verb here is in pechi. Pechi erchach imosen. Bu iri reduiu. This really has a U at the end. That tripped me up at first, but there's a third person built in here. Cement. Cement. Men is to remain. Semeni is to establish. Geez, does that fit in this context? Not really. To stand, maybe? I forgot what Neveu has in this.
Well, I'll try if you like.
Okay.
So, ir is that in fact? Does that mean if?
If, yeah. Literally as for, but very often it translates into if in English. Yes.
Okay, as for,
Mhm.
that's not pharaoh, is it? Their next word.
No, it isn't. It's pech is to attack. It's
Okay,
the
sorry. If to attack.
it has the E at the end.
Oh, why is he carrying something? If I
Oh,
if
no.
I attack.
If, exactly. If I attack. Yeah, that's right.
But I don't know why that pharaoh doesn't look like normal. Oh, it's a pharaoh speaking.
It's Pharaoh speaking. That's why it's spelled.
Ah, if
That's
I
why
attack, do is the or is it two? The
literally it's true. It's going to sound clunky in English, but you're correct that that's what it means. Yes.
if I attack two, what's that next thing with his hands in the air?
So that is the number, the sign used for a million.
Oh my
I
goodness.
love this one because it looks like, yay, I have $1,000,000. Or,
Okay, a million. So in that case, it's 4 million.
You would think, but in this case, it's just a plural of million. So let's say millions,
Oh, 4
maybe.
millions. If I attack 4 millions, let me just make you smaller so I can see the thing.
Mhm.
No, it's not you, it's me. I've got people in the picture. 4 millions.
Emotion.
Eri. Oh, Imsen. Of your
Good guess, but what is im generally?
Im there.
Can be there, can be, and as a preposition, for example, imoth or like
Oh, Imoth. I've forgotten what that is. Imoth. I don't know. Forgotten.
that's fine. So like for example, imoth would be in it, or in him, emotion. Um, sometimes it means more like among, which fits better here. Literally, it says in sun being the third person plural, right? So if I attack millions in
Of
them,
them. Yeah, in them.
literally
Okay.
among them, but yeah.
can
So
it be with? Sorry.
it can. Like for example,
Okay.
if you say im and a hammer, basically if I attack them with a hammer, then that would be an instrumental. But just so it could be. Technically, it could mean here if I attack millions with them, if he had talked about, I don't know, arrows or something in the previous sentence, that could make some sense.
Oh, okay. So it's used for means
Okay.
sometimes.
Right. Okay. So not, I do not. So bo iri, is that right?
Yeah, just it's no I. Um, the subject is something else. Um, Do not is correct. The only question is who.
Radui, radiu. Is it they something?
Yeah, because of the U, you're correct. What does reduit mean by itself, though? Um, I'm trying to think of that word. I think it lives on in Coptic.
So is it arms,
The other extremities.
There's a
legs?
picture of them.
Correct. Okay, exactly. And it's not just any legs, but it's the reduiu.
Their legs.
Exactly. You got it. Their
Do
legs.
not their legs.
Or the legs do not cement.
Summon.
Let me see how he put it. He
Now,
has,
is that a verb which means rest?
yeah, or stand firm is what he has. I like that better. Let me put stand firm.
Okay.
Mhm.
What does it actually mean, stand firm? Okay, so they collapse.
Basically, that's what it means. So mön is almost like remain in English. No relationship, but it's a good way how to
Yes.
remember it.
Yes.
Um,
Oh, remain. I see. Yes.
yeah,
Remain.
right.
Hara woo. Hara wa.
Waarsen. Waarsen.
Oh, sorry, my brain's gone blank. I ought to know what hara wa. We've just been doing that for hours.
Right. So her is that what this chapter 17 is all about? The Aorist marker, the positive one.
Okay. So is it wa or not? Is that joined together, the wa?
Yes.
Wa. Okay. Is that about existence?
Not really. I glossed it on the right.
Oh, flee.
Waar is to flee.
Wow. Okay. So they fled
Uh,
to
Hmm. Okay, now let's zoom out a little bit. Let's talk about the tense. The whole thing is about the aorist, which is for things that are generally true, right? So if I attack millions among them,
They will always flee.
exactly, they will always
Yeah.
flee. That's the key thing here. They cannot stand, their legs cannot stand literally, right? Their legs cannot stand. They will always flee. And that's, of course, that's a good example. Actually, we have a negative aorist in here. Their legs cannot stand firm, and they will always flee a positive aorist as well. So that's why I put this one at the beginning, because I thought it's a good example of showing you how both of them are used. Yeah, and that's essentially it for the sentence. If I attack millions among them, even if I attack millions among them, they cannot stand in my face. They will always flee, basically.
Very good. It sounds very biblical.
Doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, though 1,000 attack me, the Lord is on my side.
Exactly. Nothing over some good self-confidence. Any questions on this one? Good job. If not, let's continue in this vein. There's another one very similar, a little bit easier.
Yeah, I'll do the easy one.
Okay. That's the spirit.
So we have bu aha, Ju
Mhm.
hatef.
Actually, it's spelled out in this case, one of those cases. Hatif, you got it.
Hatef.
Wait, wrong ah. Hatif. Here we go. And what do you think it means?
Do not, or I guess don't erect or stand stones, something.
What is do? It
Oh, I
has
thought, oh, well, not mountains.
right, mountains. So something about mountains.
Mountains.
And what about the mountains? Bu aha du.
The mountains, I guess, should not stand before him or not in front of him.
Right? And you're right that it can mean should. Sometimes the aorist has that meaning. Although in this context, like if it's a sentence similar to the one before, I would just go with the straight can. Like the mountains.
Cannot stand before him or
That's
with
right.
respect to his front.
That's right, with respect to his front.
Also very biblical sounding.
Biblically, even the mountains cannot stand before
The
him.
mountains can't stand before him.
You got it. And the interesting thing here is this is the simple aorist. So he doesn't use the bu iri acha something, but he's just using bu acha. Remember, there's like two ways how to make the negative aorist. He could have used this. Bu wait, how would that work then?
Bu iref, bu iref aha, or no, not bu iref aha.
I think it would be like this. Bu ire ju acha so it would look like this. Let me write it out real quick. So he could have said this. Bu ir. Of course, it doesn't work because I have 3 different keyboards now. Great. There we go. Ir ju iner. Yeah. Great. Iner acha. There we go. So he could have said it like this, expanded with the iri, and then the subject right after it. But he took a much simpler path and just said bu ahaju erchativ.
Just a quick question. Does the aorist require those particles, hair and bu or ben, or can it be used without them? Is there like that's hair is for the affirmative and bu or ben is for the negation, but can it be used is there a way to form it without those or
You could just use the first present. If you don't want to
Okay.
exactly stress, if you don't want to put special emphasis on this is an aorist, basically, then you could do it without and just make a simple first present. But
Okay.
if you want to stress it, then you have that extra.
You need to use either fair or boo.
That's right.
So there's no way to form it without those particles.
I would do it the other way around. I would say if you form it if you want to express something that's generally true without boo or gerade, you're not marking for it. Does that make sense? It's
Got
not
it. So you
not
should
marked
use
for
the
it.
first present, so it's more open-ended for
Kind of. I
that.
mean, then it
Okay.
really is up to the listener to know what exactly
Right.
you meant.
Okay. So potential translations for this are like always, generally, or can,
Right.
or is for the negation is not, or yeah,
Right. So
cannot. Okay.
this here has like a literal it has a never built in, like can never
Right.
stand before him, basically. It's just not the
Okay.
case.
So that has to do with generally or always, and the opposite of those. So,
Correct. Although I have one example sentences where actually it's being used for should. I think though we may only get there next time because I'm looking at the clock and we're already running over a little bit. If you guys are cool with it, we'll just do the last three next time, because I think it's going to be another 10 minutes or so. And then could just go straight into 18 if everybody is all right with that.
Thanks for being patient, Aurelio. Sorry, it's been like wading through treacle dealing with.
No worries.
yeah, thank you for putting up with me talking so much. It's just very exciting and interesting. So thank you.
You guys are doing great. And hey, like I said before, we're figuring it out together, right? I don't think any of us has really formally studied this before. So this is this is good. All
Part of
righty.
the fun.
Have a great
Well, thank you,
weekend.
guys.
See
Thank
you
you.
all
Take
next
care.
week. Bye-bye.
Good day all.
Bye.